he would troll Canada and say, we're the same language, the same people. We could do a lot better job than this guy. And of course, he took that very seriously. And then there was an election. Trudeau was a failure. Poilievre, the conservative candidate, had a 20-point lead. He lost it partly because Carney was the champion of Canadian nationalism and said, we're never going to make a 51st state. Donald Trump has no business doing. It was kind of like what Trump did with Panama and Greenland. It's a way of art of the deal. We got China to we kind of made it a little bit more irrelevant in Panama. We've got some reforms going on. Same with Greenland. We were never going to invade either one. We're never going to make Canada a 51st state. You need a majority vote of the Congress. The Congress is never going to vote to admit Canada because the left would feel it was an infringement upon their sovereignty. We were imperialists, colonialists. The right said, why do we want another New York or Colorado to screw up the country? So it's not going to happen. Carney knew that, but he ran on it, and he whipped up nationalism, and that was fine. That's what politicians do, but now he's in a conundrum. He's got to come to the White House. Trump knows what he did, so Trump is reminding him about the 51st state. But there's two issues, and they don't look good for Canada. Number one is, in 2014, all the NATO countries promised to spend 2% of GDP. And under Trump's prodding during the first term, and then the Ukraine war during Biden's term, it has frightened most of them. And there's only 8 of the 32 nations that have not met their 2% obligation. Canada's one of them, but it's one of the least cooperative of the 32 nations. In other words, it only spends 1.37% of its GDP on defense. It won't kick in another $40 billion to help arm it. And you could make the argument that it depends on the United States. It looks at that if there's any hostile activity, cartels, they're down there in Mexico with the United States between them. And nobody is going to proverbially mess with Canada when the United States has it under its nuclear shield, Alaska, early warnings, you name it. So they know that, and they do not want to spend the money. And they're shorting their other NATO partners, and they're derelict, and they're culpable. The other thing is they're running up a $63 billion with their trade surplus with their partner. And most of it is because they have a thick sulfurous crude oil that's in the middle of the country. And it's very convenient for them to go right across the border and sell it to us. And we like it. And we can refine it. We have the refineries that can deal with that type of difficult crude. It'd be very difficult for them to send it all the way to their east or west ports and make the same profit. 95% of their oil comes to us. We're a good customer, in other words. Why would they not then say, we'll try to import more poultry, cheese, agricultural products? We can't get down to zero, but we can cut the trades by 20 or 30 billion. You're our neighbor, but they didn't do that. And so he instead whipped up, it was very successful to whip up Canadian nationalism, very successful to win that election. But then where do you go from that? You go and see Donald Trump and you want to just say, we're not going to be a 51 state. We're not going to be a 51 state. Does he really believe that the majority of people in Congress are going to vote to admit Canada? Nobody wants to do that. So what am I getting at? He could have had a statesman-like message both during the election and when he saw Trump. He could have said this: Donald Trump is trolling us. We're friends with the United States. He's trying to needle us so that we spend more money on NATO and we lower our surplus, which is growing very big. And we're going to do that.